Well, welcome back. I think we're all here. And thank you all for joining us this week. We are so grateful to have our very own Karleen Manchanda here to do this morning's Dharma talk. And so grateful because she is speaking to us all the way from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is located on Treaty 1 territory in Canada. Thank you, Karleen. She is a Zen Life teacher in training with Roshi and has recently begun formal Zen studies with Sensei June. She is a fourth generation Japanese American born, raised in Hawaii, and has made her home in Illinois here with us. A graduate of University of Illinois, like myself, in Champaign, and now is in Canada. Her focus, she really enjoys working with several different Buddhist traditions over the last 19 years, and she has studied many different, it seems like all kinds of studying around mindfulness and you've been teaching mindfulness as well. So for the past 19 years, her most rigorous education has been her parenting of her two highly spirited children, and she is grateful to share with her loving husband. You enjoy writing, baking hula, and time alone in nature. We're so happy to have you here, Karleen. Thank you for joining us. Her Dharma talk is entitled Embodied Awareness.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I'm sorry, speaking of, I have two cats and they're a little confused with the time change. I'm just going to open this door so that one cat doesn't disturb me. Hold on. So sorry about that. Living in the present moment here. So hello to everyone. Some of you I've met and some I have not. As Kelly said, my name is Karleen and my pronouns are she and her. I am a settler here in Canada and living on Treaty 1 territory. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge, first of all, a season of transition for our Mother Earth, as well as for our very own ZLMC. And I also wish to make a land acknowledgement to note that Manitoba, the province where I live, is located on the treaty territories and the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe, the Dakota Oyate, the Denesuline, and the Nehetuwok nations. And it's also the location of the homeland of the Red River Métis. So as we move forward today, may we continue to walk on a path that recognizes our interconnectedness with openness and with compassion. So last week, Robert spoke with us about not knowing, the first peacemaker tenet. And this is kind of a nice connection or jumping off point for my talk today, which is about embodied awareness. And I think it's connected because embodied awareness is a different way of knowing beyond sort of that intellectual mind knowing that we tend to, I think, be more familiar with and more comfortable with. And to start, I'd like us to consider this comment from Sebene Selassie, who's an Ethiopian-American author and meditation teacher in the US. And she says this, she says, mindfulness is a bit of a misnomer. It can lead us to think that meditation is all about the mind. It can lead us to, in fact, we bring an embodied awareness to our practice when we can bring a full awareness of our mind, our heart, and our bodies. And with that, we have much more capacity to be present, to be clear, and to be kind. And so today, I'd like to share my understanding of embodied awareness, what it is, and why it can seem kind of difficult or challenging to access for us, And in this context, I will make a very, some reference to trauma's impact on our ability to be embodied. I'll also try to look at why it's even important. Why do we care about embodied awareness as people walking on the Zen path? And what practices can help to cultivate it? So to begin, what is embodied awareness? Well, it's a difficult thing to put into words because generally it's a nonverbal felt sense. So it's not just the word embodied obviously has the word body in it, but it's not just an awareness that we have about our body, but it's an awareness of what is happening inside the body that we have. So to sort of demonstrate this, I would invite you to try something with me. We can have a little bit of fun with this. So if you would like, you can take your hands, or one hand if you'd rather, but I'll do both, and just kind of shake them up a little bit. And then just bring them to rest on your laps. And if you bring the spotlight of your attention, your awareness to your hand as a part of your body, then if you look at them, just see what you notice. Perhaps as a part of your body, you might notice how many fingers are there. You might notice how long or short your fingernails are, whether they need cutting. You might notice, the wrinkles on the skin, or the bones that you can see underneath the skin. So this would be kind of a conceptual awareness of our body, of our hands as a part of our body. So if we do a little shake of the hands again, and then this time we set them on our laps, and I would invite you, if it's comfortable for you, to close your eyes and start to bring an awareness to the inside of your hands, to feel what's happening inside of the skin on your hands. So as you sit, the first thing you can do is just come to stillness and allow your hands to really rest on your lap, to be supported fully. So there's no resistance or feeling of, having to strain to keep them there. And just notice what kinds of sensations might be happening inside your hands. Perhaps there's a tingling, maybe there's, some throbbing, maybe one hand feels differently than the other hand. Just notice for a bit. And you can gently blink your eyes open. And my hope is that with that short, small demonstration, that you get a sense that the second type of awareness that I encourage you to engage in, that would be more of an embodied awareness of what's happening from the inside out. It's sort of an internal felt sense. Whereas, a conceptual or intellectual awareness really is very much coming a lot from the mind, right? So the embodied awareness is much more of a bottom up kind of awareness, where it comes from the body, and then you may label it with your thoughts, with language. Whereas a top-down awareness is really where we engage most of our time with in modern society, where it's from the thinking mind, and we're have all kinds of stories that we're telling ourselves about our body. And so in looking up, at what embodied awareness is and how that might feel for different people, I came across a yoga teacher, and one of my very first steps onto the spiritual path was through an embodied practice, which is yoga. And so I was very interested to know that this teacher, his name is Matthew Sanford, from the age of about 13, has been paralyzed from his chest down after a car accident. But he's a yoga teacher. So our traditional, idea of a yoga teacher is someone who can move their body with their muscles and put it into different postures and, direct students to do the same. But he started an organization that's called the Mind Body Solutions, and he works with individuals who have spinal cord injuries and other disabilities and teaches them yoga. And so for him, the magic of yoga came after more than 10 years of working with doctors that sort of told him the way to approach your body as someone who is paralyzed from the chest down is that you're going to get your upper body as strong as possible so that you can kind of pull the rest of your body through life. But he realized that, this wasn't sort of fulfilling for him. He missed his body. And so he found a wonderful yoga teacher that was able to help him to realize that even subtle sensations, and first of all, that sensations aren't just about what happens in your muscles. There's other kinds of sensations. Some people call these like the subtle body. It's not just physical, awareness that we can have. There could be energetic awareness. There could be intuitive awareness. And so for him, even the subtle kinds of sensations allowed him to have an embodied awareness of his body. And he said that over time, when he tries to explain it to people, and others puts it into words, they kind of look at him like, I don't get it. But he said over time, it's not the language, but the experience that does the work. And I think that as people who practice mindfulness and meditation, that this is also something as we look at embodied awareness in this context, it's something to keep in mind that it's not, it's not the language, but it's the experience that actually does the work. So if our embodied awareness is something that really we can all access, why is it that it's such a challenge to do so? It's much easier for us to think our way through our days than to feel our way in our body through a day. If you've ever done the practice of, wherever you are at a certain, whenever you think of it during the day, just think, come back to my body, come back to my body. It's pretty shocking how many times you have to tell yourself that reminder to really come back into your body. We often tend to leave our bodies in favor of our mind. And another yoga teacher that's very well known is Judith Lassiter. And she has written a book called Living Your Yoga. And she said that most daily activities are goal-oriented. We all spend most of our time forgetting to feel, to sense, and to know life moment by moment. So, we have our to-do lists and we've got places to go and people to see. And so we forget. And it's interesting because if we think about it, when we were born into this world as a baby, our primary source of awareness was embodied awareness, right? Our intellectual minds weren't fully developed at that point. And if we felt tired, hungry, scared, we acted on that. We didn't doubt it. We cried out and we asked for the attention that we felt that we needed. But over our lifetime, we learn through societal norms, maybe family expectations, in a whole variety of ways to condition ourselves to sometimes ignore those felt sense communications and get on with the things that we think we should be doing instead. I think that much of modern society places a lot more value on intellect versus body wisdom. There are some cultures that have, a greater tradition, a longer tradition, and maybe more understanding of body wisdom. There's more value placed on doing rather than being, on what's conceptual versus what's felt. And so the focus can become, when we talk about our bodies in this context, it can become how we can make it more beautiful, or how we can improve our body, make it stronger, faster, better, rather than how we can relate to our own bodies. There's a strong conditioning that can happen to avoid even feeling different parts of our body because of pain, maybe because of discomfort, maybe it's a source of shame at some point in our life, or that it has unpleasant feelings. And so we avoid it or we push it away. So trusting the body it can be challenging, and it's also messier and much more vulnerable than relying on what Tara Brach calls the control tower of our mind, right? We can kind of, if in our mind, we can plan, we can expect, this is what might happen. With our body, if we really let go and trust our embodied awareness, it can be very unexpected where that might take us. So it's a difficult thing. But we can work with it. We can work with it. And at this point, I think it's really important to acknowledge that with extreme experiences of overwhelm or trauma, a person may struggle to have a felt sense of safety. And that affects our ability to trust the body and to make sense of experiences. And so in these cases, if you choose to work with practices that really deepen embodied awareness, it's important to resource ourselves. It's important to, when we explore these practices, to do it with a lot of patience, with a lot of self-compassion, and to seek out the appropriate kinds of support, so that it can be a growing experience and not something that's re-traumatizing. And so for this variety of reasons, we find that, embodied awareness is not always natural, even though it was kind of the way that we started out experiencing the world. And why is it so important then to return home to our bodies? Why is it so important to embody, to have this kind of embodied experience? Well, the first place that I'll point to is actually, that we experience life and presence through our bodies. And I think that this is one of the reasons why one translation that I read is that the Buddha said, there is one thing that when cultivated and regularly practiced leads to deep spiritual intention, to peace, to mindfulness and clear comprehension, to vision and knowledge, to a happy life here and now, and to the culmination of wisdom and awakening. And what is that one thing? It is mindfulness centered on the body. He also said, if the body is not cultivated, the mind cannot be cultivated. If the body is cultivated, then the mind can be cultivated. And so in some ways, it's kind of surprising that, the one thing that seems super, super critical is the body, as opposed to our mind and our thoughts and, working with the monkey mind and all of that. But opening to our bodily experiences opens us, I think, to a fullness of our life, to a wholeness. And I kind of, in preparing for this talk, I felt like there were sort of two aspects of this fullness, or the importance of it. And one has to do with reconnection, is befriending our body, which is what leads us closer to wholeness. The other, though, is interconnection. Because when we're able to be open, we're able to be with ourselves and be comfortable in our own skin truly, we relax those inner barriers, those inner protections that we've built over time, and we can feel our connection. We can feel, not just, think about it, but actually feel our connection to others and the world around us, which is moving us in the direction of oneness. I think as well, embodied awareness is also a key to creativity in the arts, whether it's music, dance, painting. There seems to be, an intention to express what is felt, what is often beyond words. And so this is something that can really help us to tap into those creative sources in ourselves. And I'm going to share, I'd like to share just an experience that I had that kind of hopefully helps to illustrate a little bit how paying attention to our body can really be helpful for us. Over the summer, a while ago, I was walking to our garage, probably to drive to the grocery store or something. And there's a sidewalk that runs right along the side of the garage to the gate. Walking along with just the intention of getting where I need to go. When suddenly, at a certain point on the sidewalk, I felt in my body this kind of constriction in my torso, and I felt the need to stop. There wasn't any rational reason to do this. Nothing fell from the sky towards me, or there was no animal about to attack me. But it was a felt sense, right? I was just aware in my body that there was something, that this feeling was happening. And so I chose to listen to that. I don't always, we don't always. I chose to listen, and I stopped. And I just allowed those feelings to be in my body. I just stayed with it. And after staying with it for a few moments and allowing that to be inside of my body, I realized that the spot where I stood was the very spot where the winter before I had slipped on a sheet of ice, fallen, and broken my wrist. And it was, many months after the accident had happened. But after I realized, that realization came to me through that bodily experience, I then felt a sense of loss and sadness, and realized that, the physical trauma and the loss of, the change in the ability of my hand, my wrist to do things, I had never really acknowledged that. I had worked through the fear of having to go to the hospital during the start of COVID. I had worked through, the pain of after surgery and working through physical therapy, but I had never had an opportunity to acknowledge that sense of loss. So my awareness, prior to that moment of my injury was mostly sort of top down, right? I broke my wrist. I need to get to the house. I need to get to the hospital. I need to listen to the doctors. I need to do my exercises. Very much my thinking brain taking control. But this broken wrist also, meant a whole nother part of my experience with the broken wrist was this sense of grief and loss. And so I think that for me, that was a really good lesson about how embodied awareness can really help us. It's in a healing process, but also then just realizing if we can open to those feelings, which are not pleasant all the time, it just allows us to, to bear witness to things in a really compassionate way. There's a women's health and trauma recovery practitioner. Her name is Kimberly Ann Johnson. And in her book, Call of the Wild, she's written this quote, which I'd like to share because it really sums up nicely, I think, kind of the importance or the value of embodied awareness. She says that when we can learn to listen to, work with, and fully inhabit our body, we can begin to heal. We can begin to act in accordance with our current reality rather than the past. We can witness and be witnessed in the fundamental patterns that have become the default ways we interact with the world, and then we can transform them. And much about that quote, reminds me of this mindful and Zen path that we are on. So what kinds of things then, with these challenges and with its importance, what kinds of things can help us to embody, to cultivate embodied awareness? Well, certainly, as June Sensei can tell us, mindful movement, for me, yoga, and also some hula. Some of you might really connect with practices like Tai Chi, from kind of exercises that are, I guess, used in more restorative kinds of ways for the body. Things like the Feldenkrais method, which really kind of encourages people to sense where their bones are and how they relate to each other in the body. There are many, many kinds of mindful movements that can help us to really just develop a greater connection with our body. And there's a reason as well. Another practice is the body scan, which many of you might be familiar with, but it essentially brings a really kind attention to different parts of the body, usually in some sequential manner, so that we can notice what's present in the body and allow whatever is there to be experienced without judgment, right? So this develops that connection with the body through sensations. And this Kimberly Ann Johnson has a beautiful way of explaining sensations with relation to the body. And she says sensations are the poetry of the body. They're a powerful doorway out of habitual thinking and feeling, and a window into our felt sense. So if words are the language of the mind, then sensations are the language of the body. So that's I thought, a really lovely way of looking at that. And the other practice, which I've heard most from Tara Brach, but I know that many practitioners, meditation practitioners, and people in psychology even use an acronym called RAIN. And it's a reflection or a practice that can be used in many contexts, but for embodied awareness, it can be used to help deepen our awareness of our body, what's happening in the body. And so the R in RAIN stands for recognize, which means just to notice what's happening. So in my example of, standing on the sidewalk near the garage, it was just, okay, I've got these feelings in my body. I'm going to stop. And then A means allow. You give space to it. You just let it be just as it is. The I in RAIN stands for investigate. And in this case, really investigating in the body, not a think about it kind of investigation, but more, how is this experience living in my body right now? Where am I feeling it in my body? Is it in my chest, in my stomach, in my arms? And what is the feeling like in my body? This is, the sensations. Is it energy? Is it buzzing? Is it tingling? And then the N, in this case, there are many different words that people use for the end of rain, but the one that I like for body awareness is nurture. So once you've, had a chance to be with the experience, that you nurture yourself with a gesture of kindness and compassion towards what you're feeling. And then after that, really critically, is that you then take some time to just rest in that awareness, to really sense the openness that can come from just allowing yourself to get connected with that feeling. And the other, practice that I think in the Zen tradition that seems very much to help cultivate embodied awareness is koan study. And I can't speak with expertise about koan study. I'm just a beginning student of Zen with June Sensei, but in just trying to attempt the very first one, I was all up here in my head trying to figure out how do I answer this? And so the practice of koan study, from my understanding, is very much more about the nonverbal way of understanding something, which definitely connects to that embodied awareness. So, to finish off, I'm hoping that maybe through this talk you have, a bit of a maybe different or clearer or understanding of embodied awareness and how it can really help us on our spiritual path. Tara Brach says that when we inhabit the form of our bodies, it becomes a gateway to the formless. And when we talk about one of the core values at ZLMC of living a Zen-inspired life being openness, when we can work with embodied awareness, we're more teachable. We can learn and learn from and grow with our life. We're more receptive. We can kind of stay in relationship with all of life in a better way. And we practice that not knowing and recognize that even in the midst of uncertainty, we can trust our embodied experience and remain open. And I think, one of the really touching experiences that I had with this kind of gateway to the formless and connection to, things around me is after the very first 3-day meditation retreat I did as an online participant. I chose to stay at and rent a little cottage that was on a sort of rural property outside of our city so that I could just have some time in solitude. And on the 3rd day, there was a little woods near the place where I stayed, where the husband and wife who were hosting it, they had built this lovely little path with handmade wooden benches and little inspirational signs along the way. And so every break that we had, I would go and walk in these woods. But on the last day, after spending time in session, in retreat, with lots of time for meditation, lots of time for mindful movement practice, creativity practice, and just some stillness and peace, I walked into the woods and could hear, there were all aspen trees in the fall. So the golden leaves were, fluttering in the wind. And suddenly, I had the sense to look up at the leaves. And at that moment, there was this intense sensation of just being connected to the trees, that I was actually a part of their movement and their song, their breathing through the movement of their leaves was the same as my breathing and my song, if you will, in my life. And it was really beautiful. and difficult to explain. It's kind of like making a translation of a really good book. You lose something in the telling of the story, but it's something that perhaps some of you have had similar kinds of experiences with. And so as I close the talk, I just, I appreciate your attention and your willingness to be with me while I attempt to to talk about something that's difficult to put into words, and hope that perhaps in some small way this can be of service to you on your path. Thank you. And I would be
Thank
very
you,
happy.
Karleen.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to take any comments, questions, or contradictions even.
So I can pass the microphone around here in the room for anyone who would like to share a comment or ask a question. And those of you online, feel free to just unmute yourself and jump on in.
Karleen, thank you so much for that talk. I have to avail myself of any talks on embodied experience because it's so easy to ignore it. It's so easy to just do my normal thing, which is stay in my head. And my strategy, one of my strategies, go-to strategies, is just to be busy all the time, you know? And when I'm like that, I don't pay attention to my body and my experience in my body. But I have learned a little bit over the years. And like one of the things I've learned is that my body holds different feelings for anger versus anxiety versus sadness, you know? And so when I'm feeling a really tightness across my chest, I know that that means that there's real stress in my life, you know? So I need to pay attention to it. So it's small, but you know, that's part of the path, is just learning, I think, being open to learning more from my body, the wisdom that comes in my body. So I really appreciate your talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Yeah, and really, it's not to discount the small noticings, because that's what it's all about. Actually, that developing that, you know, sensitivity and awareness. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely talk, Karleen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roshi.
You know, there is no contradiction. You asked if there's a contradiction. When it comes to the body, I don't think there's a contradiction. I think the body doesn't lie. I think the body is kind of an open book, and the only problem is that we don't trust it, and we even discount it. So it's such a lovely talk you gave this morning on a difficult subject. So really appreciate the way you really went into it carefully and thoroughly, and through your own experience as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Karleen. A beautiful talk. I found especially your experience of walking out, you know, to the spot where you broke your wrist and you just stopped because there was something that came up. You weren't really sure what it was, but that pausing was such a loving kindness gesture to your body, kind of a recognition of the wisdom there that is different than the mind, you know, different and equal, you know, I think. And I also find it very interesting that the Buddha said, you know, cultivation of mindfulness of the body, right? So what is that? What is that?
Thank you, Karleen, for that talk and your insights. I have always felt that health is very important, because if the body is feeling pains or things that distract it, it's hard to do anything else. So I think the Buddha, when he said that, I mean, I totally agree, I guess. So anyway, who else would like to talk? Robert?
Thank you. I'm reminded, I've been reading some Karleen Myss, who is has been an intuitive diagnostician, who claims that we are our body, especially our fourth chakra. We can intuit, if we're aware of what our gut feeling is, that we can learn a lot more of what our body can teach us about ourselves and other people. So I just thought I'd add that along with it.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Karleen.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I have a kind of a question and a comment. About 6 months ago, I broke my arm, and it's healed. But in the process of doing physical therapy, which I did several months ago, what I noticed was while they were manipulating my arm and asking me to move it, they constantly seemed to be engaging my mind in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, it occurred to me, why are they asking me, well, how are you? What did you do this weekend? What are you having for dinner? Where are you going? Why don't they just let me be with what I'm experiencing in my arm? Now, I take it that that's probably what they're taught, but it doesn't seem to me it's not the right thing to do. I wanted to experience that.
Yeah.
And they were just asking me questions about, well, what are you doing? Blah 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 blah. So anyway, that's kind of a comment, and I don't know how you feel about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I was somewhat disappointed in that aspect of my physical therapy.
Yeah, I think, Earl, I think many of us can point to that experience. There's a discomfort, I think, that many people feel with silence. There's a need to sort of fill it with words or activity or, and it's unfortunate because I think the more we practice, the more we realize how much wisdom can come from that silence and just being able to be with the experience that you're having. I do think generally, although I've never gone through the training of physiotherapy or anything like that, and I think we have. I'm not sure if he's here. I thought we had someone in that field in our sangha, but
Jeremy.
Yes,
He's traveling.
Okay, it's too bad he's not here. He would probably have some good insights on that. But yes, I'm guessing that that conversation is perceived as as friendliness and getting to know your client and helping maybe even to take your mind away from the discomfort that you might be feeling during those exercises. So those are my thoughts, Earl. I could definitely see how you would feel. You could feel that way. Yeah.
Karleen, there was another thing you said that I really enjoyed when you said the form, the being embodied is a gateway to the formless, and I think we don't appreciate that so much because we think of maybe being embodied as somehow narcissistic, but actually it's just the opposite. When we're embodied here, we're connected there, and And they teach this in focusing a lot, is that when we're disembodied, we're also disconnected from the people around us. And like if you're at a party, you know, and you feel all nervous and you're kind of not there with yourself, you're
Absolutely.
also not there with other people. And
Yes.
it's interesting that your experience of the retreat actually brought out that sense of more spacious formlessness as you were more embodied.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that quote from Tara Brach was just really beautiful when I hit upon it. I thought, wow, that's really powerful. There was another author that I was mentioned in a book I read, Stephen Schwartz, and you know, he said something like the body only it seems like it's an enclosure, like something to carry ourselves around in, but it's actually a passageway. It's a passageway, or like she says, it's a gateway. It's kind of the opposite of how we've been taught to perceive it, so yeah.
I suppose that's because we objectify the body in a verbal way, and then we're sort of separated from it.
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, personally, yeah.
Oh, Harry, hi. Another question here.
So I forget who made the comment, but you were talking about getting your physical therapy and the therapist is talking to you. Make a request. Ask her not to talk to you conversationally because you want to feel the movements in your body. And I know when I'm getting a massage from a new person, and if they start talking to me like, so what kind of hobbies do you have? When did you retire? Where'd you go on vacation? I just say, stop. I would rather have my massage in silence so I can feel what's happening, enjoy it more. So you got to ask for what you want in life. If you don't get it, maybe not, but you got to take your shot.
I love that, Harry. Thank you. I really like that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Karleen. That was really wonderful. So appreciated it. And I feel like just thinking about how we look to, give that gift of our attention to others and be present and do that. And how can I really do that without doing it for myself first? So it's really, I feel like an act of just loving kindness for yourself and then how you say for others. So I love that you brought this topic to us again this morning.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Karleen, thank you so much. I feel like I have so much to think about from your talk. I just loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Enjoy your day, everyone. Thank you for being here. What a lovely morning. Thank you, Karleen.